Okay, so I always like to start out with just briefly addressing, the other needs of your dogs and cats, other than just the physical. There's a mental aspect and there is an emotional aspect. And these are just some examples of things that I like to do with my pets. Obviously, I'm very much a proponent of outdoor exercise, getting them out in the world, getting them off leash if and when possible. I know LI Dog has worked really tirelessly to open up some parklands on Long Island to dog owners. So there's a lot more parks that we're now allowed to take our dogs to. And for my cat people, what I did in one of the apartments I was living in, I had my contractor build a shelf, you know, closer to the ceiling than the floor. So it just gave them more space when I was living in my apartment. And there's a lot of things you can do for cats just to make a more enriched environment. If you can see, I have my camera on. I don't know if you can see above my head on the wall, I had another shelving unit put in for my cats. So just, keeping in mind that I believe these animals are conscious beings, and there's a lot that we can, do for them, and a lot of the world we can share with them. So moving on to get the presentation started. Give me 1 second. Okay, here we go. So the story of Boo. I always like to talk briefly about this dog, who is really the reason why I do what I do today. I was volunteering at a well-funded shelter up in Westchester, and I saw this dog in an isolation run, and he was gnawing on himself. He appeared to be very sick. His skin was a mess. He had a very bad ear that had shrunken down. I think they call it cauliflower ear. And I literally stopped dead in my tracks and I said, "What's wrong with that animal?" And they said, "We don't know." And I was not know what's wrong with him. So I agreed to take him. I adopted him. And the day I adopted him, they slid across the desk a box of different lotions and sprays and pills that I listed on the bottom left that they said he would be on for the rest of his life. I said, okay. I took the box and the 2 pages of instructions, figuring that as soon as I saw a vet, the vet would probably prescribe a bunch of more stuff. And I did the math in my head and I said, okay, they wish me luck. And knowing full well he was never getting any of that stuff, by the way. I put him on a homemade diet, very rudimentary back then, boiled chicken, probably doing rice, potatoes, sweet potatoes, and blasting him with Shaklee supplements, which are the supplements that I take. They're plant-based, human grade. And they don't test on animals, but clearly I did. And I did for 9 months. I gave him alfalfa. I gave him omegas. I gave him zinc, vitamin C, vitamin B. And 9 months later, I had a different dog. Every patch of fur grew back. His ear stayed clear. The cauliflower ear stayed clear as long as I gave him a probiotic. And a year later, you see this picture of my Boo. And had I known I was going to use these photos, I probably would have taken better ones. But here we are. And when he moved on 5 years later, my sister said, people still think you're crazy, to feed your dogs raw chicken wings. But, clearly you're onto something and you should get out in the world and share it with people. So ultimately, I found a program to get certified in canine and feline nutrition. That came next. First was canine and feline nutrition. And having a teaching background, I created this lecture so I could share it with other pet owners. But it started with this very, very sick dog that wouldn't have lasted much longer in that shelter. So that's my Boo. Now, briefly, I like to educate pet owners on the history of commercial pet food because I think it's important. Sometimes pet owners get pushback. Sometimes it comes from their vet or other family members regarding putting their pets on a homemade diet. There's a lot of misinformation out there. I hear a lot, oh, table scraps and homemade food give my dog a bad stomach. That's not true. It's just what they're feeding and how they're feeding it, et cetera, et cetera. So I think briefly, I like to just address the history of commercial pet food. First, I just want to start with dogs and when they became a distinct species from the Eurasian gray wolf, which goes back as far as 40,000 years ago. Depending on what archaeological evidence you're looking at, anywhere from 40,000 to 10,000 years ago, dogs became a distinct species from the Eurasian gray wolf. So just keep that number in mind. Fast forward to the 1800s, we have a rather interesting gentleman named James Spratt, an entrepreneur who would travel to Europe with his dog. And he decided the ship biscuits that the sailors ate were not good enough for his dog. So he created a dog biscuit so that his dog had a good, a good biscuit to eat while traveling back and forth on the ship. And he, being an entrepreneur, decided to sell this biscuit, and he opened up his company in the United States in 1890 to sell biscuits for dogs. Right then and there starts commercial pet food. In 1907, we have F.H. Bennett. He introduces milk-boned dog biscuit. The 1920s, we have kennel rations. They can horse meat for dog food. World War II, our tin cans the tin becomes too expensive because of the war, and our surpluses of horses disappear. So as an alternative to canned pet food, Purina, very savvy, which was a maker of feed for farm animals, saturates the market with dry kibble dog food in 1957 and dry kibble cat food in 1962. So I ask pet owners, when they're discussing this with me, what did they eat for tens of thousands of years before commercial pet food? And the answer, quite simply, is prey animals and table scraps. So tonight, my goal is to teach you how to feed your dog or cat prey animals and table scraps, going back to what they survived on and I believe thrived on for tens of thousands of years. Just one more little piece of information about pet food that I think bears mentioning. A really great resource is dogsnaturallymagazine.com. I don't know if anybody references that at all. I'm also looking at the chat box when I see messages, so bear with me if I kind of pause for a second. What's important to know about commercial pet food? Well, there's a couple of things that I'll address during this lecture, but by and large, it's heated many times over. I mean, how much heat and preservative do you have to apply to chicken or beef or turkey for it to be stable at room temperature? We all know if we buy chicken and we're going to cook it for ourselves or our family, it's only going to be fresh in the refrigerator for so many days. So the commercial pet food is heated many times over. They add back synthetic vitamins, which neither we nor our dogs can absorb. And helper molecules needed for digestion, activity of enzymes are missing, which is why a lot of pets wind up having stomach issues. They have digestive issues, and then they're on the more expensive prescription dog food. This information comes from an article called Why 99% of Dog Food is Fake. It's a great resource, this website. I reference it quite often. There's also the 4 Ds of commercial pet food: diseased, disabled, dying, and dead. All of this is sent off to rendering plants. And pet food companies got caught putting dead animals in their pet food because the pet food was coming up positive for pentobarbital, which is the chemical, we'll say, is used to euthanize animals. So these are the dirty little secrets of commercial pet food. And then last but not least, a lot of times people will say, well, it's AAFCO certified. That means nothing. AAFCO is simply a group of representatives from pet food companies who make up the labeling requirements for pet food. So just little information on, you could find all this information online today. Nothing I'm saying I think probably even comes as a surprise to most pet owners. Now, the most important slide tonight for my dog owners is this one. So just take a minute to look at the ratios of how to make a balanced canine meal. The most important part of your dog's meal is the animal protein. That's the most important part. Ideally, 75% of your dog's meal is animal protein. It can certainly go under 75%. Sometimes it might be 50 or 60%. I'll show you an example of a meal that's more like 50% animal protein. However, the bulk of your dog's meal should be animal protein. I'm going to go through why, and I'm going to go through what protein I mean. And it's going to be either raw or cooked, with the exception of pork and fish, and I'll discuss why. The remaining 25% is a combination of fruits, vegetables, and grains. I like feeding dogs grains. Unless your dog has a true grain allergy, grains are fine. Grains, which I also include in that category, carbohydrates, break down to glucose, which supports the central nervous system. And we have an epidemic of anxious dogs in this country. If I get to write a third book, it'll be Fido is Starving, because I am, and then Purina's going to come and off with my head. I'm serious. I do so much behavioral work now, and so much of it is anxiety and destructive behavior. And I firmly believe it's the diet. And when I get my clients to change their dog's diets, there is always a change in behavior. So of course, I look like a miracle worker, but really it's just quite simple. The dogs are walking around hungry all day long. I have 12 animals in this house. And right now you don't hear a peep out of anybody. There's 6 dogs and 6 cats. Aside from the exercise they get, they are all eating a biologically appropriate diet. I like to joke the cats aren't Meals on Wheels, but there are 12 animals in this house, and I don't have a very big house, but I attribute it to the meals that they eat. So we're going to talk about fruits and vegetables and grains, but the first thing we're going to talk about is animal protein. If anybody has a question, please just unmute yourself or put a message in the chat box and I will address it. So what are these ratios based on? The anatomy of prey animals. If you were to have a chicken in your yard or a turkey or a duck, most dogs would go after that animal and try to kill it. There would be small amounts of organ meat. There'd be a neck, there'd be some wings, there'd be some legs, and there'd be some undigested stomach contents. So protein is important because once digested, it breaks down to essential amino acids. One of them being tryptophan, which helps with the creation of serotonin, which we'll get to. We also have the growth, repairing tissue, and maintaining muscle mass, which I think is really important as dogs age. Protein helps with the immune system, regulating hormones and brain chemicals. The whole link with brain chemicals and tryptophan and serotonin really is fascinating to me, because this is why I link diet and behavior. So animal protein, 50 to 75% of their diet. And then, of course, very important amino acid, tryptophan, helps their brain create serotonin. Now, carbohydrates, I include in that category fruits, vegetables, and grains. Like I said earlier, glucose supports the central nervous system. Carbohydrates also provide fiber, vitamins, and minerals. Now, what's important here is a digestive enzyme called amylase. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates. Dogs do not have amylase in their saliva, neither do cats, which is why, in my opinion, this kibble that we give the dogs and cats passes right out of them. Dogs on commercial pet food, cats drink a lot of water and also have very large voluminous stool, because I believe they're not even digesting what they're eating. A lot of times my clients will say, oh yeah, my dog threw up and he threw up what he ate. None of the kibble was digested. That has a lot to do with amylase, which they do not have in their saliva. And they have a little bit in their gut, which helps with the digestion of starch. And I believe that was evolutionary over time as they started to eat what we were giving them. But the fact that dogs and cats don't have amylase in their saliva should be your biggest indicator that cats especially should not be eating kibble. It's why they get diabetes, and it's why their teeth get bad. The remaining part of the diet, fat, if you're cutting back on animal protein, suppose just maybe it just might be, you're not able to get to the store as much, or I'm very sensitive to costs. You could add a little fat into the meal. Eggs and fish are easy and inexpensive ways to increase the fat content of a meal. Fat's very important and certainly helps with the skin and the coat and the immune system, and also assists in the absorption of vitamins. If you have a puppy, no less than 60% of their diet should be animal protein. And I always suggest that puppies are fed 3 meals a day for the first year. Now, this is the most important slide for my cat owners. Dog owners, you might come across a cat one day or a kitten like I did. And here we are 6 cats later. So that's true.
Am I muted or can you hear me?
Is that Susan?
Yes.
You are unmuted.
Okay.
And I hear your cat is agreeing with what I'm saying.
Yes, she is.
So this is for my cat owners. The bulk of the diet, even more so than the dogs, needs to be animal protein. Cats are obligate carnivores. They need meat to survive. My cats largely eat animal protein. The only vegetables that they like are boiled or baked sweet potatoes and pumpkin. But for the most part, they're just eating animal protein, and they're all very healthy. I have cats that range from 12 years of age to a year and a half. And the 12-year-old and the 11-year-olds play with the 1.5-year-olds like they're still kittens. So this is the slide for my cat owners. Now, more specifically, let's talk about the animal protein for the cats, right? And the 10% of the vegetables, if you want to do that. And then we're going to just recap this in the next slide for both dogs and cats, because it's always about the animal protein for the dogs and the cats. For the cats and the dogs, raw or cooked. I do not do raw pork. I cook that because of trichinosis, but I can tell you your cats will like a good pork loin. My cats love pork loin. And the amount of food you can get out of a pork loin for cats, it sounds expensive, but it really isn't. I see what people are paying for this high-end cat food, high-end dog food. The cans are very expensive today. The wet food that's organic. You get a lot more mileage if you just buy regular food at the store, family packs of beef, turkey. Another great thing for cats is organ meat. My cats love beef hearts. They love chicken hearts. Ideally, you want to feed organ meat to the cats raw. That's where all the nutrition is. Once you start to cook it, it depletes the vitamins and the minerals. And you can get organ meat easily in the store today. The only thing is that I cannot stress enough is it must be fresh. Once it hits the store shelf, it's been in transport, it's already a few days old. Don't keep organ meat more than 2 days in your refrigerator, and always smell it. Make sure it smells fresh. I get my organ meat from a butcher in Huntington, and my raw meat from Armelinos Canine in Huntington, and I buy the containers of his beef hearts. They grind it up, and I know it's fresh because I know he was grinding it that morning or the day before, and my cats love that. They love the raw beef hearts. The cats also love fish. Some people say cats wouldn't eat fish. Cats shouldn't eat fish. They love fish, and it's animal protein. They love tuna. They love sardines. They love salmon. And I have a couple of pictures coming up, the brands that I use. You can get a 15-ounce can of sardines, Goya or Iberia if it's on sale, it's less than $2 at Stop and Shop. And I can feed 6 cats on that can. So I'm also cost conscious. Another thing that I love to get at Costco is the canned chicken. They're big cans. I can feed 6 cats on 1 can of canned chicken. And you can buy that stuff in bulk. This needs to be easy for pet owners, and it needs to be affordable. And finally, 10% of their diet can be vegetable. If you find a vegetable they like, Cats can be very finicky, but if they like mashed potatoes, that's fine. Cats are very different than dogs. I do like to point out that by age 3, 70% of cats have some form of dental disease, and it comes from the kibble. A lot of time pet owners think the kibble cleans the teeth. It doesn't clean the teeth. And remember, they don't have amylase in their saliva to even digest that kibble. Kibble is sprayed with salt, fat, and sugar, which is why they drink a lot of water when they're eating commercial pet food. The picture down below on the right is these are some chicken hearts that I cut up that I was able to buy in bulk from Wild by Nature, but there's a lot of time involved when you buy stuff like that in bulk. So I just buy it from Armolino's because they already have it packaged, and it's not that much more money. So here's a picture of what I just mentioned earlier. They love the salmon from Trader Joe's. I mean, I think these companies should make me their spokesperson. I'm always promoting their products. But the cats love that salmon. And you can also use that for your dogs too. I always tell people, don't give your dogs fish oil, give your dogs real fish. And dogs don't need a lot of fish. They need a little portion of their meal. But the cats can have an entire meal of fish. This can here, I get at Trader Joe's. It's about $3.50. I can absolutely get 6 meals out of that can. The middle can is the chicken breast I mentioned from Costco. I can get 6 meals out of that. And then finally, on the far right, Goya, Iberia, all these companies make these 16-ounce, I believe that's a 16-ounce size can. It's the bigger can of sardines. There's some tomato sauce in there. Just rinse off the tomato sauce. Sardines are excellent for dogs and cats. I would also give my dog some sardines. But all of this is stuff you can buy in bulk and have on hand. And it also doesn't require any cooking. So it kind of offsets the work involved. Now, let's just recap animal protein. Dogs are 99% wolf and cats are obligate carnivores. Meat for dogs and cats can be raw or cooked with the exception of pork. I do cook pork because of trichinosis. Fish can be cooked or canned. I don't care for raw fish, and I will tell you why. Although hardcore raw feeders will feed raw fish, it has to be frozen at a certain temperature for a certain amount of time. And that's a lot of work for the average person. So I just prefer to get either cooked fish or canned. Now, raw bones are excellent for dogs 30 pounds and over. An easy raw bone to purchase are chicken wings. That's the ideal meat to bone ratio. But you can also purchase necks. I noticed stores today are carrying the packages of turkey necks. My turkey did not have a neck in it this year. And the stores are getting savvy because now they're taking the necks, which most of us throw away when it gets home, and they're packaging them and they're selling them. They're getting savvy to dog owners. I swear that's what's going on because this is the first year I did not have a neck in my turkey. And things like necks and wings, I have pictures, but I cut it up into bite-sized pieces to slow them down when they eat it. And then finally, we're talking about organ meat. Ideally, you're feeding that raw also. Once you start cooking it, it depletes the enzymes, the minerals, the vitamins. Cats can have an entire meal of organ meat, whereas dogs, you want to feed it in small amounts. It's very rich. So you only want to give a small amount to your dogs. And in the handouts that I provided, I also gave you the serving size chart from my dog cookbook, and it'll tell you exactly how much organ meat to feed your dog. Very important. It's got to stay fresh. Do not keep it in the refrigerator more than 2 days. You can even start to feed it when it's still partially frozen because freshness always trumps variety. Okay, Chrissy, I see you're saying you didn't get a handout. You know what, Chrissy, my email is going to be at the end of this presentation. And for anybody who didn't get the handouts, I was a little late in sending them yesterday and I apologize. Just take my email down at the end of the presentation, send me an email and I will send you the handouts, which you didn't need the handouts for the class. Okay, so this is the animal protein, very important part of your pet's diet. Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about the carbohydrates. This is for the dogs. Cats don't need grains. They're most likely not going to eat them. And if you can find a fruit or vegetable that your cat likes, I'm sure there's cats out there that would like mango. I have one of my cats has a sweet tooth, and I'm sure Charlie would eat some mango. Ideally, the vegetables and the fruits are raw and pureed. Believe it or not, raw vegetables are easier to digest. When you cook them, you're actually destroying the very enzymes in those vegetables that are needed for digestion. And when you puree them, you break down the cellulose walls, which also makes them easier to digest. Many people give their dogs carrots and it comes out a carrot, or they give their dog a piece of apple and it comes out an apple. You want to puree them so they're able to break them down properly, because a dog's digestive system is very short and acidic. So the more broken down the fruit or vegetable is, the faster their body is able to digest it and assimilate it. The only vegetables that I would cook are the ones that you see listed. Asparagus, obviously, I would put that in the oven. Beets, I would steam. Kale, I would steam. And squash and sweet potatoes, I would put them in the oven. You know, regular potatoes you could boil or put in the oven. Important to note that too many fruits and vegetables will loosen the stool. I tell pet owners, stick to one fruit or one vegetable and make enough for 3 or 4 days. And for example, I buy the Trader Joe's frozen bags of mixed berries and the frozen bag of mango. I stick it in the refrigerator so it defrosts. I put it through the food processor to puree it, and I have enough fruit for probably 2 days. I have 6 dogs, so I go through fruit quickly. But just pick a fruit or a vegetable and make enough for 3 or 4 days. And then rotate. Find the ones your dogs like. Find the one that's easy for you to acquire wherever you're shopping. This doesn't have to be a lot of work. And then regarding grains, I cook the grains. I've also started doing pasta. I do a lot of pastina. I like the little stars. But I know certain raw feeders, certain homemade, feeders would say that's insane, but I want them to have that glucose. I want their central nervous system supported by anything I think can do that. So I add a little bit of either couscous I make, or quinoa, or pastina. And I'll be very honest with you. If it comes down to a matter of cost and somebody can't always do 75% animal protein, I would much rather see somebody cook up some elbows. And I have this meal in this presentation. Half the meal is some cooked macaroni or elbows, a hard-boiled egg, and some sardines. That is a much better meal than commercial pet food. So this is a fun way to also make servings of fruits or vegetables. What you see on the left, this is ice cube trays, and this is the actual lid. So for example, like in the summer when I can buy a watermelon for like $2, and then I bring it home and don't know what I'm going to do with all this watermelon, because I've done that before, I'll puree it in the food processor, and then I will have a couple of these ice cube trays, and I'll just fill all those little, cubes, and then throw it in the freezer. And same thing on the right. These are silicone ice cube trays. This is pureed banana. There's 10 here, and I have 3 of these trays, so I can easily make 30 servings of a fruit or a vegetable just by pureeing something and pouring it into the silicone ice cube trays. It's just a fun way to have fruits and vegetables ready to go in the freezer, and you can certainly feed them frozen. I pop out those little paws. The pureed banana they love. They also love the watermelon. I believe I got those on Amazon. Now, these are some beneficial additions that you can do every day, every other day, once or twice a week. Bragg's to me is one of the most important things you can put in your pet's meals. It's great for digestion. And I think it's also great for allergies. And right about now, you know, dogs and cats are sneezing, and so are we. So Bragg's would fall under the extras category on the serving size chart that everybody's going to get. The rule of thumb with the apple cider vinegar is a tablespoon per 50 pounds of body weight. And I give my dogs Bragg's apple cider vinegar every morning. They get it in their breakfast. Coconut oil is also great. I've also started doing flaxseed oil. Garlic, which there's so much misinformation about it out there. For dogs over 6 months of age, it's excellent for the immune system, excellent for inflammation. And some people swear it's a flea and tick repellent because it builds up in their skin and the fleas and ticks don't like how it smells, which is understandable. Garlic is great for inflammation and digestion, especially if you have older dogs. They start to get a little arthritic. You get the ginger, I think you'd call that a root. Just take the skin off of it and grate some ginger. I have a couple of pictures of that in some of the meals I've made. I had an older dog, a rescue, who was quite arthritic because he lived on the end of a chain for many years. I like to give them as much natural stuff as possible before resorting to, you know, pain meds and anti-inflammatories. Eggs are also excellent. It doesn't have to be hard boiled. It could be soft boiled. Some people do raw eggs, scrambled eggs. The thing about eggs is that they provide 100% bioavailable protein. And what I mean by that is all of the protein in eggs is digestible in comparison to, say, a chicken foot, right? Some people they give their dogs chicken feet, which is also 100% protein, but it's also 100% undigestible protein. So there's a digestion factor with protein, and eggs 100% protein, 100% digestible protein. Parsley is good for digestion. It's an easy thing to grow around your house. Things that help in digestion I like because a lot of dogs wind up getting digestive upset, but I firmly believe it's from the kibble because they just can't digest it. Flaxseed, the flaxseed oil or the ground flaxseed meal are great things to add. I like that they have antioxidants and provide omega-3 fatty acids. My dogs love yogurt. I will buy the Greek yogurt or the plain yogurt and add a little bit to top off their meals. We all know pumpkin is great for digestion. It helps with loose stools. It's just one of the best things to have on hand. I mean, you can order a case of it now off of Amazon, very inexpensive. It's a great go-to if you don't have any fruits and vegetables available. Pumpkin is also great because, bananas. That's one of my go-tos also. I always have bananas in the house. Pumpkin seeds are excellent. You get the raw ones, the green ones, and grind them up. And you can sprinkle that on their food. A lot of antioxidants, a lot of omega-3s. And finally, fresh lemon juice. We know it cleanses the liver. If you find yourself having to do regular vaccines for your pets, I always suggest putting some fresh lemon juice on their meals a couple of times a week just to help with cleaning the liver, which is constantly processing all that stuff. And like I said, the beneficial additions are things you can give every day, every other day, or a couple of times a week. They all have excellent nutritional values and also offer variety, which I happen to think, you know, is very important for the pets. Now, taurine is very important for cats. It's an amino acid that supports heart and eye health. Heat destroys it. So ideally, you want to feed your cat some type of raw meat. I prefer to feed raw meat. I'm not going to ever feed them raw shellfish or raw shrimp or raw eggs. But I do feed my cats both cooked and raw meats. and they do love the raw organ meat. So that's really important for cats. Even if you have to cook it a little bit, you want to make sure your cat's getting some form of taurine. You can cook the beef medium rare. That will provide taurine to your cat. Now, I spoke earlier a little bit about the link between diet and behavior, and I do just spend 2 slides on it. I think it's important. I think there's a lot of behavioral issues that pet owners are experiencing. You know, some can be mild, some can be more serious. I'm certainly not suggesting that true aggression would go away with a proper diet. I mean, true aggression is true aggression. There's certain levels of fear-based aggression, but I do encourage pet owners just to consider changing the diet when they feel that their animal is just all over the place, very destructive, getting into things. Feces and dirt eating is a big problem. That's just a vitamin deficiency. Depression and dull coat, that's a fatty acid deficiency. In terms of aggression, you can decrease protein and increase fat and carbohydrates. I had said earlier, carbohydrates break down to glucose, which supports the central nervous system. Home destruction, you add a little extra fat. If you're feeding animal protein, that will provide the fat. Dogs have a behavioral need to earn their keep, and they like working for their food. So things that I tell pet owners, have your dog sit and wait or stay before they go to their bowl. 2 of my rescues that have a bevy of behavior issues, although a lot better today, they know they have to sit and wait before I put their bowl down. They also have many puzzle feeders available today to pet owners. These are just things you can introduce, rather inexpensive and quite simple, to work on behavioral stuff with your dog. I just want to address some of the comments that are coming in. Okay, so Chrissy, I'm happy to see this. Change of diet, she is doing so well. Yes, there's a lot of nerve. So I'm glad you brought that up. This is how I view it. I look at it in terms of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the first need is food and shelter. So just think about your animal being hungry all day long. They don't know when their next meal is coming or where it's coming from. If it's consistently inadequate, I would have to imagine that would cause anxiety and nervousness. I'd be anxious and nervous if I didn't know when my next meal was coming, where it was coming from, and if it was inadequate. So consistently feeding proper food, I think, just addresses a whole host of issues that go on in our pets' minds. Now, serotonin, I think, is something that was not being discussed enough in terms of, diet and behavior with pets. It is the link between aggressive behavior and nutrition. Serotonin counterbalances dopamine and noradrenaline, which encourage aggression. We know serotonin promotes feelings of calm and relaxation. How do you create serotonin? Tryptophan. Tryptophan is an amino acid. Tryptophan is needed for adequate serotonin production. And tryptophan is found in turkey, chicken, beef, lamb, and salmon. Tryptophan also offsets dopamine and noradrenaline. So my question is, in the absence of animal protein, which has amino acids like tryptophan, is a dog's brain or a cat's brain able to make serotonin? That's what I'd like to know. So that's a big question in my mind. But I think this is an important slide just for pet owners to keep in the back of their minds. So when I was getting certified for applied animal behavior, I had access to many journals and databases. I was a student at the University of Washington. And believe me, I searched for some studies that would prove what I've been saying for a while. And not surprisingly, I could find nothing except this one study conducted by Veterinary Record in 2017. I'm just going to summarize it for you, but basically they studied 69 dogs, which all had anxiety and chronic stress. They fed one group of dogs regular commercial pet food, and the other group, the ND group, were given a nutraceutical diet. I'm not going to go into the specifics about it. It still wasn't a homemade diet, but it was, things were added to it, fish oils and a couple of other things. It was basically a better fortified diet, but still not a homemade diet, mind you. So when they looked at the dogs before eating and after eating, you see the darker group that got the fortified nutraceutical diet had higher levels of serotonin, higher levels of dopamine, and higher levels of endorphins, and lower levels of noradrenaline, think stress, and cortisol, think stress. So this very small study in this veterinary record, I feel, proves that the better diet, and not even the best diet, absolutely affects serotonin, dopamine, and endorphins in dogs, and brings down noradrenaline and cortisol. But very hard to find anything, which is not too surprising to me. Disappointing, but not surprising. So signs of protein deficiency, and by now most pet owners have been in the vet once or twice to deal with these problems and or pick up some prescription dog food to deal with these problems. Chronic skin problems, chronic itching. My clients tell me my dog is always itching. Dull, dry coat, excessive shedding. I will say this, I do not have a lot of pet hair around my house. And I absolutely believe it's because of the way the dogs and cats eat. Chronic ear problems. Some breeds are always with ear infections, and that becomes very costly over time, not to mention the poor animals always suffering. And I view that as just an overgrowth of yeast in the body because of the breakdown of the kibble, which they can't digest. Weakened immune system, hormone shortages. And of course, I have to joke that my dog Asia here might eat my cat Charlie, but he's not, because Asia eats properly. And he also wouldn't, because I can tell you Charlie is one tough cat, and Charlie would win that fight. But I firmly believe we're all peacefully coexisting because they eat properly. And Chrissy, I'm glad to see that your dog loves dinner time. Oh, they get so excited to eat. Every meal I make, I'm so happy to see how excited they get. And it's so satisfying for me to know they love what they're eating and it's good for them. So these are just some examples of meals that I wanted to share. Up here on the left are some raw chicken necks. I was buying raw chicken necks in bulk, 40 pounds, very inexpensive, but a bit of a labor of love because I had to clean them and put them in bags. You see some pureed banana. This is the grated fresh ginger, and that's a sardine. I strictly do raw with my pets. You don't have to do raw by any means. You can certainly cook beef, turkey, chicken. I do raw because I believe it's not only better for them, but I can get my meat at a canine butcher. I can buy it in bulk, and it's a great price. So it's very easy for me to do this with all these animals. Now, up here on the right, we have some raw meat, and we have some boiled sweet potato. This is some raw chicken heart, and this is the ground raw pumpkin seeds that I spoke about a little bit earlier. Now, I did talk briefly about a meal that's about 50% animal protein. And right here on the left, a meal that my animals just love. It's just some elbow pasta that I cooked. We have almost hard-boiled egg, and sardines. So I'll cook a pound of pasta and add about 3 of those large cans of sardines to it, mix it all up, and throw an egg on top. They love that meal. And in the middle, we have some raw meat, some pureed mango, and a sardine. And I apologize for the yellow line going through. I don't know what that is. And that was not there last night, but I apologize. And on the far right, we have some raw meat. This is some jack mackerel, coconut oil, pumpkin, and that Citraboost, that powdered vitamin is Citraboost that I give them. It has some probiotics in it. I give them a pinch every day just to round out what they're eating. I do it more so for the probiotics. I think probiotics are very important for gut health, but it also contains calcium, which dogs need. So if you're not able to feed your dogs raw meaty bones, or you don't want to feed raw meaty bones, or you're not using a meat like Armelinos, which has the crush bone, that vitamin also provides calcium, which is very important. This is how I used to buy my raw chicken necks. And some people like to buy in bulk, and it's easier for them, but they were so inexpensive. They were 69 cents a pound. Those are from Murray's. I asked the butcher at Wild by Nature because they sell Murray's chickens. I believe those are the organic chickens. So I just casually asked him one day, I said, what's Murray doing with all those chicken necks? It was like a little joke we had. Murray wasn't doing anything with them, and he was willing to sell them for 69 cents a pound. So I did that for quite a while. And on the far right, you see some chicken necks, raw, no cooked bone, some pureed banana, and a hard-boiled egg. Now, this is how my cats eat. This is what they would eat in a day. They eat 3 meals a day. There's no kibble. They don't graze. So we have some jack mackerel up on top. We have some raw beef hearts for lunch. And that is the raw ground chicken with the crushed bone that I get from Armelinos. It's crushed very fine. I've been feeding that meat for over 10 years. And I've never once had a problem because people do ask me, well, how fine is the bone? It's crushed very fine. The cats have never had a problem chewing it and eating it. I'd like to think it keeps their teeth clean. This is some raw beef liver that my Charlie, he's my hugger, so he gets to be in the presentation. And right here is he did not eat all of that in one meal, but people ask me about serving size. So I just like to tell them that those are about 2 ounces, quarter cup each meal, and they get 3 meals a day. I've tried to move them back to 2, but they're very smart and they want that 3rd meal no matter what. So 3 meals it is. So the reason why I promote Armelinos so much is because it makes doing the raw diet affordable and it's always fresh. And I do not recommend many places for a whole host of reasons. But I can definitively tell you that Joe Armelino is grinding up those bones the day before you pick up your meat or the morning of. It is always fresh. A lot of resistance to the raw diet is because they say dogs get sick or salmonella. So for me, it's very important to recommend a place where I know the meat is fresh and your dog or cat is not going to get sick. It's also very affordable. I see the price of the raw meats in the pet store and they're 4 times. They're literally 4 times as much as what Armelinos is selling. Armelinos also sells organ meat. They sell bones. So he makes the raw diet very, very affordable for dog and cat owners. And it's a family-run business. You can ask them questions. They'll help you out. And I've never had a problem with their meat in over 10 years. And like I said, he grinds the bones fresh daily. He's not shipping in this meat. It's him doing it. So if there's any problems, you go right to him. But there won't be problems. So snacks always come up. I do not buy commercial snacks, the pet food snacks. They're expensive and a lot of them just are filled with garbage. So on the left, you see some peanut butter filled pretzel nuggets from Trader Joe's. I get the unsalted ones. The dogs love them. They also love Jozo's, Strawberry-O's, Cheerios. I'll often pack those in a Kong with some peanut butter. Put that Kong in the refrigerator overnight, and the next day, that's about an hour, half an hour to an hour, they'll be busy with their Kong. Hot dogs are another great treat, especially if you're doing training. Turkey dogs, hot dogs. And like I said, they're a lot less money. So there's so much less money you're spending on real food for treats that are better for your pets. Marrow bones are excellent for dogs. Do not leave your dog unattended with a bone. That's important. A lot of butchers are now selling these. I know Key Food is carrying these in the freezer section. You want frozen bones. You want to keep them in the freezer and ideally give them to your dog when they're still frozen. It'll just take them longer to clean the bone. And then once they're done with the bone, just throw the bone out. Don't let it sit around for days. So when my dogs get a marrow bone, they're usually done within a half an hour to an hour. I throw it out. And then up on the top, not that my cats get snacks, but this is just some turkey bacon that I got at Trader Joe's. I cooked it up a little bit. If you have a very finicky cat, it's a good way to start to get them onto real food. Cats are a little harder to transition than dogs. Dogs will eat anything for the most part, but stuff like turkey bacon, somebody brought up bologna last night in my lecture. Anything to get cats off of kibble, to me, is a step in the right direction. And then finally, this is my contact information, and I want to open it up to any questions you might have. And I'll bring up the chat box. So if you want to unmute yourselves and ask any questions, please also take down my email. This way, in the event that I did send the handouts yesterday to Crystal, but I was a little bit late in getting them out. So does anybody have any questions or comments? Is everybody still there? Nobody has to say anything? Everybody's still muted.
I think I'm unmuted.
Okay. Okay, so I just want to yes, let me just answer some of the dogs. Yes, Chrissy, dogs can have pork, but I would cook it because of the trichinosis. Lauren, with the chicken wings or marrow bones, okay, great question. As long as they're not cooked, they will not splinter. It's the cooking that causes bones to splinter because the cooking, the heat changes the chemical composition of the bone. So there's a great book called Give Your Dog a Bone by a Dr. Ian Billinghurst. He's from Australia. The whole book is about feeding your dog raw meaty bones. So I like the necks and I like the wings in terms of meals. And the marrow bones are a snack. That's why I was saying, Lauren, once they're done with the marrow bone, throw it out. They don't need to chew on it for 2 weeks because that to me would cause splintering. But you also want to keep your eye on the dog if they have a marrow bone. But by and large, they get that grizzle, they get that marrow and they're done with the bone. Lauren, I was giving my dogs chicken livers. Yes. As long as you don't overfeed chicken livers, not sometimes, if you feed your dog too much organ meat, it can create loose stool. But organ meat is excellent. I will tell you, if your dog was chasing a chicken in the yard, he would kill the chicken, and part of the chicken he would eat is the liver. There's a lot of listen, I hear you. There's a lot of misinformation out there on the internet. It's could make you crazy. I don't blame pet owners for being so confused. Everything that I teach, everything in my book, everything I tell my clients is stuff that I do with my dogs and cats. And I've been doing it for over 10 years. And they're all the picture of health and wellness. I do blood work when I have to. If I do a neuter or spay, or if I have to go to the vet for anything, which is very rare, my blood work has always come back perfect. So I'm not telling pet owners to do anything that I don't do with my own pets that I've had, I feel, great success with. So any other questions or comments? Things you found surprising, things you found particularly helpful?
I do not want to cook for the cats. So to hear that I could do it through can, because I don't cook fish, is intriguing. I have a cat who has a lot of skin problems, has been on prescription cat food, and is not getting better.
Okay.
So how would you start the diet?
So that's a great question. So I would start by putting the cat on wet food, get rid of the kibble.
Okay.
Do you feed kibble or wet food?
Both.
Okay, get rid of the kibble. So let's say the wet food is, what brand are you using?
Right now it's Pro Plan. There's like 3 different kinds that they eat. I tried to remove the chicken, thinking that it was the chicken that was doing it.
Okay, so I would, let's just say you're using chicken just for argument's sake. I'd start to take out a little bit of the pet food in the can and add some real chicken.
Okay.
And let's say it's a fish can. I would take out some of the fish or put it aside, add some real fish. This way you start to introduce real fish with the fish-based wet food.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
And I understand the whole cooking thing in time, but if you were, do you go to Costco?
Yes, I do.
Okay. They sell a 3-pack of organic beef, and each package is about 1.33 pounds. And I believe that 3-pack is about $20. But you cook up that 1.33 pounds medium rare, you're going to have enough meat for a cat for a week.
Right. And you could freeze it.
Yes. And my cats love it. It sounds like, oh my God, organic beef, but it's each package is 1.33 pounds. There's 3 packages. It's $20. You cook up that package and don't overcook it. Just lightly cook, medium rare. Freeze half of it. You'll have enough meat for days for your cat.
I'm going to try it.
So you can, you can do a little bit of cans and because I, with my cats, because I have 6, I usually break it down like this. They get raw meat for breakfast, they'll get a cooked meat for lunch, and they get fish for dinner. That's the rotation in this house.
Okay.
And that seems to work because then I don't always have to cook. I don't cook Armelinos raw, right? They get that raw. Then I cook either the ground turkey that I buy. I can get the 3-pack of ground turkey from Costco also, which I'm going to do for, I buy a couple of packs of that. It's very easy. So
the ground turkey, you give them raw? I'm sorry.
No, from what the meat I buy from Costco, I cook. I just don't overcook the beef. The beef I do medium rare, but I cook the turkey that they sell.
Okay.
And it's a 3-pack. And it's a lot of meat. Even if you just cook 1 package up, you're just feeding 1 cat or a couple?
2.
Okay.
I have 2, a brother and a sister.
Yeah, and you get, oh, it's so nice to, I have siblings. I've had a few sets. I've had 3 sets of siblings.
This is my first set, my first 2 cats. Oh, and by the way, the line on the screen, I did that, and I couldn't tell you how I did it.
Okay.
So I want to apologize for that.
That's fine. It's been a very, it's a learning experience. I'm like, oh, there's a yellow line. How did I do that?
I did that somehow by playing with buttons and,
So,
but I found you very inspiring to cook for my cats so that Rain can finally heal.
yeah, and I'm
So,
glad.
thank you.
You're welcome. You're very welcome. I really enjoyed doing this, and I'm just so grateful to the programmers like Crystal that are having me back. I believe I was at Patchogue. I want to say it was December of 2019, but I have to go into my planner to look back. But I feel like that's when I was there. But it's just very gratifying because when I hear that the animals are loving their meals, I believe Chrissy was saying, yes, her dog loves dinner time, isn't excited. Yeah, Crystal, I think it was December of 2019. I have to look back. that was a lovely lecture too. I did holiday treats. Yeah, holiday. I remember I did the holiday treats. It was such a nice time of year to do it too, because I love Christmas. I wish I could do Christmas for like 3 months. I stretch it out to 2 months, but it was a really great lecture. It was a great time, but it's just very gratifying to get the truth out there, and it's grassroots. I mean, let's face it, Animal Planet will never have me, and they very clear why they wouldn't give me a cooking show.
Because you won't support Purina,
Yeah,
and
and they said point blank, we can't do it because their biggest sponsors are the cooking shows. And unfortunately, the vets are courted by commercial pet food companies in vet school. So that dirty little dance starts very early.
And that prescription food is very expensive.
And they're
Now
making a lot of money on it.
You mentioned coconut oil for their skin.
Mm-hmm.
How much would I put? I mean,
you know what I would do? I would get, Costco sells these canned sardines called, the brand is Seasons. I think
seasoned?
It's Seasons, like the Four Seasons,
Okay.
and it's a 4-pack or a 6-pack, and it's a nice pack of sardines. I would give the cats some sardines. Just drain the oil. They don't need all that oil. I think giving the cats sardines, especially the one with the skin issues, I'm almost betting those sardines.
Yeah.
And those sardines are my favorite. The ones that Costco sells in the oil. It's just a nice hearty sardine. There's about 3 or 4 packed in that little can.
And you shred it, or you give it to them whole?
It's mushy. I just mush it up. Like I just take my hands and it's mushy. And they love, the sardines. The dogs love them too. Ooh. Another thing I started doing, I haven't added to the presentation yet because I'm still just experimenting with it. I started adding goat milk to my dog's dinners. I buy the condensed goat milk off of Amazon. And I just had this idea one night to add goat milk. It sounds disgusting and it looks terrible, but it's with turmeric. I started adding turmeric to their meals with some goat milk. And one of my dogs, who's getting a tad picky, he'll eat that every single time I put some goat milk on it. And I raised all my cats on goat milk, and I give them a saucer of goat milk at night. Yeah. I personally like goat milk in my coffee, and I buy it at Trader Joe's. But they sell the evaporated cans of goat milk on Amazon, and that's what I've been giving the cats at night for a little saucer, and then I've been putting it on the dogs' meals. I just had this idea that I wanted to give them something different.
And I could see them liking that.
And the only proof that I'm doing something right, aside from no one's killed over, I mean that,
is that they're all healthy.
And their stool is perfect. My gauge on whether I'm doing things right with their diet, because I do experiment. I want to try things because I want to share it with other pet owners, and I'm supposed to write a second edition of this cookbook, so I need to come up with a lot more material. Their stool is consistently perfect. So that tells me that whatever benefits that goat milk is giving them, which I think there is benefits to goat milk. I forget which essential fatty acid is in it, but there's one that's arachidonic acid or something. I can't say it properly, but their stool is consistently perfect. So that's my indication that these things that I'm trying on them is good for them. It's when the stool gets messy or they throw up, which they never do, that would indicate to me something was wrong, but that never happens.
I think you need to write a book for cats.
I want to, but my publisher, believe it or not, I just write, everything else is up to them. I just write the recipes. Do any of my dog owners have any more questions? Fish is also for Chrissy. You're saying that she was picky. Fish, have you tried fish with your dog? Because they love when you add fish. And the sardines are excellent for them, and they're not in the food chain very long, so they're not overly polluted sardines. It doesn't matter whether they're in water or oil, but they gingivitis, bad teeth. Lauren, I would definitely, do you want to, if you can unmute yourself, Lauren, and just give me some more information. Taking your dog off of kibble is the first step. And just overall better nutrition. I don't know if you've had your dog's teeth cleaned. Oh, Lauren, hi, love. How are you? Yes.
Hi. I have a service dog, and he always had bad breath from the day that I got him. He's a yellow lab golden cross. He's 6 now. And he recently had 2 little incisors pulled because they were loose. And then he recently also had to have a root canal because he damaged a tooth, one of his fangs, his bottom fang. And his breath was always stinky. His gums always had that red line right where it meets the teeth. So I took him to all these specialists, and he said, yeah, he has a gingivitis. He gave me prescription for this healthy mouth sort of toothpaste stuff. It's like a green, almost looks like a seaweed type based gel. Okay. I have to use on him every night. But I'm looking for something that's, that toothpaste alone, it's a 2-ounce jar. It's like $75. So I'm trying to find something that's A, more healthy, and B, not as expensive.
What are you feeding him?
He's on Purina Pro Plan, which I will say I'm not allowed to change what he's on because of the organization I get him from. Those studies that came out about like the heart issues with the commercial dog food, they said you have these 4 brands you can pick from because they technically own the dog until he retires and becomes mine. So I have to follow their rules, but I'm trying to find like I was doing the chicken livers as like a topper, or anything I can supplement that would help him.
That's a tough one. I'm sorry to hear you can't change his diet because I'm going to blame the kibble.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. He was on Eukanuba when I got him. They use all Eukanuba for their dogs because they're nonprofit, and they don't have the money to fund. Otherwise, they have too many dogs. But I changed him off of that because I didn't like that food. And they said, well, you could use Purina Pro Plan. Imes was another one.
Oh,
yeah, that was my reaction to that one. And then Royal Canin was another one, but that's really, really expensive, so I couldn't do that either. And then Eukanuba was the last. So I went with the Purina because I used to give my pet dogs Purina 1, and they always did good on that. But with his teeth, I'm starting to wonder.
Yeah, it's too bad because I think the raw meat from Armelinos with the crushed bone would really help his mouth.
Right.
And that's too bad that you can't feed him that, because just getting in that nutrition would help, I believe, once you put in better nutrition, it just, your cells are turning over, and it would help. So I don't have any suggestions. The only suggestion, I don't have any suggestions that you're going to be able to use, because the only ones that I always start with is changing the diet, getting them off of the kibble. And then I don't even know if like a marrow bone would make, if he was chewing on a marrow bone, I don't even know if that would aggravate it. I don't know if it would help.
Right. I also noticed he's not much of a chewer either. Like he doesn't I've tried unless it's edible.
Right.
If it's just like a nylabone or any of those kinds of bones, he walks away. But if it's an edible bone, he'll eat it. Other than that, I don't really know what to do for him.
Yes, I'm sorry. That's frustrating. I wish I could help you more.
That's all right.
You could always try a marrow bone and see if he'll eat it. And, even getting in, like, that could be a snack. So technically you're not, it is a snack. It might be worth a try. They're very inexpensive. Hopefully wherever you buy them from, they're in the freezer section. Put them in the freezer when you get home. And at least he would be getting some of the meat off the bone and the marrow, which is very good for them. It's not going to work a miracle though.
Right. Do you not recommend the bones that are at the pet store? Like the white with I didn't think so.
Because they've been treated chemically or heated. You know, a real bone has to be refrigerated. Ideally, it has to be frozen because it's not going to be fresh very long.
Right.
So I don't give them Nylabones. I don't give them any of, I'm very strict with my pets.
Okay.
So anybody else have any other questions or things that you found surprising or want to share?
This was my first Zoom experience, and I have to say that it was very informative, and I thank you for doing the class.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank Crystal and the library for having me back again.
And thank you to the library, yes.
Yeah, it's they've played a huge part in me being able to share my information with pet owners because it's always an audience that's there hearing what I have to say. And it's been, you know, I've been doing this for many years now, but it's like my grassroots, you know, operation here, trying to get out to as many pet owners as I can. And it's not easy, you know, it's like, I talked to somebody that was from the Food Network years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, because I would love to have a pet cooking show. I think it would be so much fun.
That would be awesome.
And she said to me, I had happened to meet her dad, and her dad and I were talking, and, oh, my daughter works for the Food Network. I'll give you her information. And she said, so like, you know, how many Instagram followers do you have? And I was like, yeah, I'm not on Instagram. That was the end of the conversation, you know, like anybody the Food Network's going to support has to have like 100,000 Instagram followers. Like, it's like, yeah, I'm not on Instagram. That was the end of the conversation.
I'm not either, but I have a Food Network magazine in front of me. So that would be great to have an article in there for pets.
Oh yes, Lauren wants more pet themed Zooms. A pet, so I could do a pet food show for you guys at the library.
Sure, I'm in.
That would be super fun.
I'm sorry, Crystal.
That would be super fun.
We should, maybe down the road we can talk about that. That would be a lot of fun. That would be fun. It's always a fun group of, it's always a feel good hour. So, and then yes, pick up your complimentary recycled plastic pet food dishes from the library, which thank you very much for offering that, Crystal. I think that was a great idea. Great.
Yes, that I got with a couple of recipe cards.
Fun. Yes. That's right. I said we had arranged this so many months ago. I totally forgot about the recipe cards. And a lot of the snacks I've made for dogs, my cats have helped themselves to, believe it or not. So, yeah, any other questions or comments anybody wants to make?
Not at this time.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody again for wanting to hear this lecture. Thank you, Crystal, for having me back. And if anybody has any, you know, things they want to talk about or questions or things they want to try, feel free. That's my cell. Feel free to call me or shoot me an email. If you have questions about serving size, in addition to the serving size chart that I sent to Crystal, that's just the chart that I had in my book that I scanned in as a PDF. Just seems to make life easier if they have the whole chart. So I hope everyone has a great evening, and it was nice to talk to you guys. And yes, Crystal, they have the book at the library. Thank you. All right.
Okay,
I'm just going to say goodnight to everybody, and I hope everybody has a very enjoyable summer.
And I thank you. Rain and Cloud, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Christine. Thanks.
You're welcome.